Mackey Chapel. Your scripture lesson is from John, the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 15 through 16, 17. Jesus said, I no longer call you servants because the servant does not know his master's business. I call you my friend because everything that I've learned from my Father I've made known to you. You see, you didn't choose me. I chose you, and I appoint you to go out and bear fruit that will last. And then whatever you ask the Father for in my name, he will give to you. Amen. Our sermon, this message, this simple message is titled Building an Intentional Legacy in Today's Diverse World. Now, at this recording, I don't know who the President of the United States is going to be. But I can assure you this, whatever happens, there's going to be violence. Someone's going to lose their life. And that's because of the rhetoric that's coming out of the White House. And that's a choice. We have a choice. You can choose to love or you can choose to hate. You can choose to lie or you can choose to tell the truth. You can choose to sow seeds of a diverse of division, or you can choose to sow seeds of unity. It's a choice. Now, an 83-year anniversary is all about your legacies, and you chose to leave an amazing legacy. Now, your choice when you make this legacy was you can choose for your legacy to be by chance, or you can choose for it to be intentional. And Mackey, you've chosen to leave a positive, intentional, 83-year-old legacy. And that is amazing. I would like to ask you a question. What would it be like? What would it feel like? What would it look like if you were instrumental in the positive development of another human being? Dr. Robert Walding, a professor of psychiatry at Harvard and the third director of one of the longest leading human development studies known to mankind. This study started in 1938, and what Dr. Walding and his associates wanted to know is what is the one thing that keeps us happy and healthy as we journey through life. And they took about 700 young men, freshmen, some were freshmen from Harvard, and then they went on the lower economic side of Boston, and they took about 500 or 600 more, and they've studied these men off and on for 2 years at a time, everything about them for 75 years. And the information from their research they collected, they found out that people who are able to build and maintain positive relationships are the happiest and the healthiest and the most successful. Now, a byproduct of that study by Dr. Walding and his associates was that people who are able to build and maintain positive relationships also leave a deep, long-lasting legacy. What's your legacy? And what legacy are you living and leaving today? Webster defined legacy as money or material possessions left over to someone by will or bequest. I've studied this paradigm for a number of years, and I've come to the conclusion that your 83-year-old legacy is not about money. It's never going to be about money, and it's not about material possessions. I believe with all my heart, your legacy that you've left for 83 years is your character. And the second part of that is it about your love and service to those people who walk through the doors for 83 years. And let's go back to your character. Every day, you paint a picture of who you are, Mackey, by the things you say and do when you interact with those people who walk through the church doors. Now, the greatest portrait of your character are the things that you say and do when you don't think anybody's watching. And when Jesus said, I appoint you to go out and bear fruit, he was talking about your character. Now, the thing about character is that we don't know who, we don't know when, and we don't know where people are going to be watching us. The second thing is your love and service to others. Paul said in Romans, he said, loving your neighbor has never harmed anyone. As a matter of fact, loving your neighbor is the fulfillment of God's law. So your love and service is those honorable things that people say and remember about you when they walk through the door looking for hope and salvation. It's those honorable things that you do when you connect with them that they will remember and they will pass on to others. That's your legacy. John Maxwell, in his book Leadership 101, he says that we spend a lot of time writing books and speaking about the character traits of leadership. But we very seldom write books and speak about the character traits of a legacy. He said, that's because that's the one we know the least about. He said, achievement comes when you accomplish great things on your own. Success comes when you empower people to do great things with you. Significance comes for you when you empower people to do great things for you. But you will leave a deep, long-lasting legacy when you empower people to do great things without you. Now, I believe with all my heart that's why Jesus was sent. He was sent to empower us to do great things without it. He even told us this in John chapter 12, 13. He said, those who believe in me will do the things that I have done. As a matter of fact, you will do far greater things than these. And he said, now, don't cry, don't moan, because I'm going back to the Father. And you should be happy that I'm going back to my Father, because I'm going to leave you an advocate and a helper, the Holy Spirit, who will help you to remember the things that I have taught you. That's all about empowering us to do great things without Him. Now, I believe with all my heart, when you leave a deep, long-lasting legacy, it's going to involve two things. It's going to involve your ability to build and maintain positive relationships. And the second part is your ability to build and maintain an intentional legacy. Now, in real time, I want to show you how this works by telling you a story of two men who truly wanted me to be successful. Two men whose legacy I would emulate until the day that I die. I grew up in poverty. I'm the middle child of 8 siblings. My father worked at a humble full-service station on Main Street in that small West Texas community that I grew up in. He pumped gas, he washed cars, he fixed flats for the majority of his life. My mother, she worked as a domestic all of her life. She cleaned houses for a living. If you remember the movie The Help, that's what my mom did. Now, the 10 of us, including my mom and my father, we lived in a 3-room house, not bedroom house, that sit on cinder blocks. There was no hot water, no indoor bath facility in that home. Whenever my mom got ready for us to take a bath, she would heat the water up on the stove and pour it into a number 3-foot tub. Now, I remember some of you from there, you know what a number 3-foot tub is. But maybe the younger ones that are not there and may not have talked to the older ones about it, but this is a teaching moment. If you look on the side of that house that we grew up in, just above my sister's head, that's a number 3-foot tub. The majority of the clothes that I wore were hand-me-downs from the homes that my mom cleaned. 5, 6 years old and standing outside the church with my aunt. And I have on my Sunday best. And if I could take that picture and I could make it IMAX for you, blow it up IMAX, you could see the holes in the knees of those jeans. And if I could make it 3D where it would just spin around and we see the backside of it, you would see holes in the elbows of that shirt or iron-on patches that my mom would put on. I remember many days, many Saturday mornings, my older brother was 4 years older than I. We would get up on Saturday morning and we would scour the neighborhood alleys looking for the best cardboard, the thickest, the best that we could find so we could cut it out and put it in the soles of our shoes so we could keep the heat of the paper out in the summer, the water out in the rain, the cold out in the winter, because our dad didn't have the money to buy shoes on a regular basis. I remember my elementary school years vividly because they were a pivotal moment in my life. I started my formal education at an all-black school in that small community that I grew up in. It was a very racially divided community, just like the majority of those West Texas schools were back in the 50s and the 60s. But that school did something that many of those school districts wouldn't do until much later. They integrated in 1961, 62, whereas Odessa didn't integrate in 1982. And they fired all the black teachers. I wouldn't see another black teacher during my formal education years. And they said to us, you do the best you can. So I remember my mother, she would line us up and she would give us a dry meat and bread and bologna sandwiches in a brown paper sack and 2 cents for a carton of milk. And I remember walking around, navigating that integration with those holes in my clothes and holes in my shoes and carrying that bologna sandwich in that brown paper sack. And it was the hardest thing that I ever did in my life. I'm a middle child, so I'm mentally messed up anyway. That walking around like that, trying to navigate like that, left me with low self-esteem. And I do not remember ever making an A or a B in elementary school. My report cards was filled with some C's, but mostly D's and F's. The last day of 6th grade, I was bound and determined. I went home and I told my mom, I am never, ever going back to school. I hate school. But my mother was one of those strong-willed women who believed in education for her children. She didn't even listen to it. So when summer was over, I found myself lined up, headed off to school, 7th grade, with my other brothers and sisters. And I hated it because it was everything that I had imagined. Nothing had changed. I still had the hand-me-down clothes on. I still was carrying that dry meat and bread bologna sandwich in that brown paper sack. Nothing had changed, and I hated it until I walked into Mr. Hake's 5th period science class. I'm standing outside of Mr. Hake's 5th period science class looking for my seat. My seat that I wanted, that was for me, was in the corner in the back. I had learned after all those years in elementary school that if you're walking around in other folks' clothes and you've got holes in your shoes and in your clothes and you're carrying that bologna sandwich in a brown paper sack, you want to keep everything in front of you. You don't want anything behind you because that's trouble. So Mr. Hake has his head down. He didn't even know I was there until I said, that's my seat in the back, in the corner. And I stepped through the threshold of the door. And when I stepped through the threshold of the door, that's when Mr. Hake looked up. And he said, oh, you must be Nathan. He said, Nathan, I've heard a lot of wonderful things about you. And when he said that, instinctively, I turned to look behind me. I just knew he wasn't talking to me. He couldn't have been talking to me. I just knew that. But he was. He gets up, he comes over, he extends his hand, he shakes my hand, and he puts his arm around me. This is all new to me. And he's talking to me, and as he's talking, he's guiding me into the classroom. And then he stops. And he says, Nathan, we have arranged seating in this classroom, and this is your desk. And he pointed to a desk on the front row directly in front of his desk, and fear just rained down all over my body. You see, I was not a front desk, front row student, and I knew this. My comfort zone was in that seat in the corner, in the back. That's what I wanted. But Mr. Hake was a master teacher. He was a master motivator. He was a master character developer. He could take a room full of 7th graders and make us all feel like we had a private tutor. He was that kind of teacher that, he made you feel like he was talking and just teaching directly to you. And after a very short period of time, he would alleviate all those fears that I had. And when I left his class on that first day, I did feel special about myself. The last class of the day was 7th grade football. And I'm lined up outside waiting with all the other seventh graders waiting for the coaches to come out and introduce themselves. And out walks this big giant of a man. He's 6'4", Coach Mark Wallace. And he's going down the line shaking hands, and he gets to me, and he says, "You're Hearn." "Yes, sir." He says, "Hearn, I heard some good things about you. I heard that you were a good athlete." And he said, "Hearn, you're going to be on my team, and we're going to have a lot of fun, son. We're going to have a lot of fun winning football games." And he smiled at me. My heart went wild. I went home the first day of seventh grade walking on a cloud. Why? 2 teachers had affirmed me in one day, and that had never, ever happened to me before. I couldn't wait to get back to school the next day. As a matter of fact, I went to school an hour early. When I get to school on Tuesday, get out to seventh grade football, and Coach Wallace was a man of his word. He puts me on his team. And in the 2 weeks of getting ready for that first game, I become a starting running back on offense, a starting cornerback on defense. I'm on all special teams, kickoff, punt returns. He never takes me off the field. And on top of this, he has these life-impacting messages that he has, and he's not only giving me these life-impacting messages, these transformational messages, he's also showing me. He's talking and showing at the same time. I trust him. I remember playing a game for him at 12 years old that I will never forget. It was a breakout game for me. I scored 4 touchdowns, rushed for over 200 yards, intercepted a pass on defense, returned a kickoff all the way for a touchdown. It was one of those games where you just have this invincible feeling. When you're an athlete, you can remember that. It was like you're invincible. But that feeling didn't compare at all to after the game. I'm standing out there on that field in that uniform. He walks up and he hugs me. And he looks down at me and he says, "Hearn, that was just outstanding." No coach had ever hugged me and told me I was outstanding. That was a day that I'll never forget. It was on Saturday. On Monday, I'm in Mr. Haig's 5th period class, and it's report card day. And Mr. Haig, he walks by my desk and he puts my report card face down on my desk. And he continues on around passing that card. I turn my card over, and I have an A in science, the very first A that I can remember getting in public school. Mr. Haig comes back around, he stops in front of my desk, and he says, "Nathan, please stand up." He said, "Turn and face the class." And he said, "Boys and girls, I need your attention." And he said, "On Saturday, Nathan," and he told them all about what I had done in the game on Saturday. I never saw him at the game. But that's what he was. He was a master character developer. He was a master mentor. He would do that for all of us. He would catch us doing things outside of class, and then he would come back and brag on us, and we would know nothing about it. Once he finished telling them about me and what I did that Saturday, he said, "Nathan is not only an outstanding football player, but he's an A student in this class. And for his outstanding efforts, I am going to make him my lab assistant." He said, "Nathan, don't move." So he goes to the lab area, and he goes into a closet, and he pulls down a white folded bundle. And he comes back, and he unfolds it, and it turns out to be a brand spanking new white lab coat like the one he wears in class. He puts that lab coat on me in front of my classmates. And I look down, and he's written my name on the pocket. Standing in front of my classmates in that white lab coat with my name on it, my world flipped. I have to paint a better picture for you. You see, I'm still that same kid. I still have the hand-me-downs on. I still have those holes in my clothes. I still have those holes in my shoes. It's after lunch, but I have that brown, greasy paper sack, folded up and placed in my back pocket because my mother told me straight up, you the one that keep losing these sacks. So if you lose another sack, you will carry that bologna sandwich to school in your hand. And she was not joking. I'm still that kid. But now I made an A in Mr. Haig's 5th period science class. I've just been named his lab assistant, something I had never knew about because I grew up in poverty. I didn't know what a lab assistant entailed. And now I'm standing in front of my classmates in a white lab coat with my name on the pocket. It didn't get any better than that. In 1960, for a black kid growing up in poverty. I remember running some days out of Mr. Haig's 5th period class to get over to football, to practice, so I could beat my classmates there to get out of all those holes. I had holes in everything. I had holes in my shoes, holes in my socks. And I wanted to get there and get into that uniform before someone saw me. And I remember one day I thought I had made it. And I was tying my cleats up. And I feel this presence over me. And it's coming towards me. And I look up, and it's Coach Wallace. He walks up to me, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he looks down, and he said, Hearn, son, those holes in your clothes, those holes in your shoes, that bologna sandwich, son, it's not an indication of the man you're going to become. Son, it's just a journey you're going through. Months earlier, in elementary school, I was making C's, D's, and F's, more D's and F's than C's on my report card. And now I'm making not only an A's in Mr. Haig's class, but A's and B's in all my classes because he gave me a new level. He gave me a new confidence in myself. Just months earlier, I was bound and determined to drop out of school. I hated school. But now, from all of these transformational things that Coach Wallace is saying for me, and not only is he saying these transformational things, he's showing me, he's helping me. I go from this kid who wants to drop out of school to now, I have a dream that I turned into a goal that became my mission in life. I'm going to be a science teacher and a football coach. And from that day on, from that school year on, nothing and no one would stop me from achieving that goal. I remember when Mr. Haig, he talked to me and he said, now, Nathan, you need to go home and you need to ask your parents, can you come up on Saturdays? I've got to help you get ready for the labs on Monday. I go up to the school on Saturday and he showed me a microscope and how to use it. I had never, ever seen a microscope before. I grew up in poverty. He showed me how to make slides. He showed me how to catch those insects, preserve them, and put them in those glass jars. He showed me how to dissect the animals. He would take me and he showed me everything about how to get ready for that lab and how to find all the answers. And when he was finished, he would look down at me and say, Nathan, are you ready? Oh, Mr. Haig, am I ready? I couldn't wait to get to school on Monday to put that white lab coat on. That white lab coat turned me into Superman. You see me, I'm running around. I knew the answers. I'm running around, I'm teaching, I'm talking, I'm reveling in it. But you know, walking around in that white lab coat also had its amenities. When I put that white lab coat on, it turned me into a chick magnet. Girls just love me. I kept my grades up through junior high school. Transitioned to high school, made the honor roll. Graduated from high school, received an academic athletic scholarship to college, finished in 4 years, and I went back to West Texas. And I taught science. And I coached football, and I served as an administrator in the public school system for 35 years because of two men who decided that they were going to build and maintain a positive relationship with me. Two men who decided that they were going to build an intentional legacy for me to follow. Now, earlier, you remember that I asked you what would it look like, or what would it feel like if you were a positive, were a positive influence in another human being's life, instrumental in developing a positive outcome in another human being's life? Well, I want to give you some examples of what that looked like. Coach Hearn, hope you're doing well. I wanted to reach out to you because I felt it in my heart to do so. I was giving my kids a quick parenting lesson the other day, a form of a lesson you taught me way back at Permian. I'll never forget you teaching me and others about race. I will always look up to you and looked up to you and loved you coaching me. I still think of you and the things you taught me in the gym. God bless you, Coach. Jason, he played football. He sent that September 21st, 2020. Although I was on the opposite side of the town, it was a pleasure competing against your teams and getting life lessons from you along the way. I always looked forward to your end of game handshake because you always said something I took with me every time. Thanks for all you did for us growing up in Odessa. Our young. He played football for the opposing team. He played football at Odessa High, not Permian. He sent that September 1st, 2020. Matthew, sir, did you ever teach biology at Permian High School? Do you remember taking a young man out in the hallway and asking him why he was wasting his time and not pursuing more challenging courses? It was a driving force in my life. I wanted to thank you and apologize for not taking your advice right then. I recently retired a decorated Marine, and I got a college degree with a 3.975 GPA. Thank you, sir. I will never forget that day. And God bless you. Matthew, student at Permian High School in my biology classes. That's August 28, 2013. Hi, Coach. I'm sure you don't remember me, but I was in your biology class at Permian, and I think it was in 91. You let me dissect the first pig in class, and I just wanted to say you were one of my favorite teachers. You're an amazing teacher. You embodied respect, class, and compassion for all to the highest degree, a quality all strive for but rarely achieved, and you carried it in spades. Although my time with you was brief, you made a lasting impression on me. For that, I am grateful. Have a wonderful, blessed day, and may the good Lord keep you and bless you always. Susan, a former student at Permian High School, she sent that on August the 12th, 2019. Those students are Black and white. If you ask me what it feels like, and I get those things all the time, what it feels like, it's like being eulogized while you're still alive to hear it. And I was simply emulating Mr. Hake and Coach Wallace. I was simply emulating what he did for me, in that every time a student walked through my biology doors, I simply wanted to give them that white lab coat experience that he had given me. Every football player that I coached for 25 years, I wanted to give them that big bear hug and look them in the eye and tell them, hey, that was just outstanding that Coach Wallace that did for me. You know, 83 years of a legacy gives you the opportunity to leave a legacy that people will remember forever. It's an awesome thing, Mackey. An awesome thing. Now, Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he paints a very vivid picture of the importance of living and leaving a positive legacy, a very vivid picture of building and maintaining positive relationships when he writes. Picture yourself Imagine yourself driving up to a friend's funeral. You park the car, you get out, and you walk into the foyer of the sanctuary. And you see and you smell all the beautiful flowers they have arranged there. And you hear the soft organ music playing in the background. You push open the sanctuary doors, and you notice that this sanctuary is filled from top to bottom with all these familiar faces. You know everyone in the church. You continue down the aisle and you get this sense of love and loss. You walk up to the casket, you bend over, you look in, and that's when you come face to face with yourself. See, this is your funeral 3 years from now. And you come to the quick conclusion that all those familiar faces have gathered there to show you their love and respect for the life that you have lived over the years. You take your seat and you notice that there's 4 people who are going to speak on your behalf: an immediate family member, a friend that knows, a dear friend that knows you well, a colleague from work, your pastor, or a director of a charitable organization that you have donated your time to over the years. What would you like for them to say about you? How would you like to be remembered? What positive character trait would you like for them to say that you have embodied over the years? Now, if you have embarked upon this imaginary journey with me, and I hope you have, I want you to take a moment to reach up, and I want you to punch pause. And I want you to take a slow panoramic look at all those familiar faces that have gathered in that sanctuary for you. And I want you to ask yourself this question: what difference would I like to have made in their lives? Better yet, Mackey, what difference would I like to make in someone's life today? What difference would I like to make in someone who's walking through those church doors looking for hope and salvation? What difference would I like to make? What legacy would I like to leave? I want to close with this. 1 Peter chapter 1, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Peter says, every good and special gift that you have received from God, that gift, Mackey, should be used in service to others. And I want to ask you this question: how would you like people to judge your legacy for the next 83 years? Would you like for them to judge it by the amount of money that the church has in the bank account? Would you like for them to judge it by the new buildings or the new land that you have acquired? Or would you like for them to judge your legacy by the number, by the character of those children that you have reared in that church for 83 years? Would you like for them to judge you by the positive relationships that you build with folks who have walked through that church looking for hope and salvation for 83 years? Mackey, we must be intentional about the legacy we choose to leave. What's your legacy? And what legacy are you living and leaving today as a body of Christ? I love you so. Thank you, and God bless you.